The last verse of chapter 6 says, when they were talking with him, the king's eunuchs arrived and brought Haman in haste to the banquet that Esther had prepared. So Haman leaves his house with all his friends and his wife, who are basically telling him, you in trouble. There's something there, the writing's on the wall. I don't think you're going to be, you're in trouble. So with that cheery thought, he goes to the palace. And so chapter 7 begins with the famous banquet of the queen. Chapter 7, verse 1. So the king and Haman went in to feast with Queen Esther. And on the second day, anybody catch that? Yeah. On the second day, how many of us have ever given a party the last 2 days? Don't answer that. I don't know. And on the second day, as they were drinking wine, again, in what condition must these people have been at that point? The king said to Esther, what is your petition, Queen Esther? It shall be granted to you. And what is your request? Even to the half of my kingdom, it shall be fulfilled. And that's a very extravagant way of saying, I will grant you anything you want within reason. I don't think he was going to hand over half of his kingdom to Esther, but it shows that he is well predisposed towards her. And then the queen answered. So that's the setup for today, and then things are going to go pretty fast from here. I think it's important to see that what we're talking about today is the origin of one of the main, it's not one of the main feasts, but it's also one of the newer feasts, but it certainly is one of the more fun festivals of the Jewish faith. And we'll go into that a little bit later, the roots of the feast of Purim. Then Queen Esther answered. Now it's interesting to see, I think you had some questions as to how Esther went up setting about this whole thing. Did she stand up and say, he did it, did she point to him directly? No. What does she do? She very, very wisely, very prudently kind of builds her case and has the king eating out of her hand. He wants to know, who is that? What do you mean? He basically already condemned this person even before she gives his name. And I think that may have something to do with being wise as serpents, innocent as doves, and wise and prudent as serpents. The Queen Esther answered. Listen to how many qualifications she gives. If I have found favor in your sight, O king, check, he's there. And if it please the king, well, that's obviously, I think she's thinking that he probably does. Let my life be given me at my petition. You can hear the king's ears perking up. What do you mean? And my people, that's a totally different request, at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to be annihilated. If we had been sold merely as slaves, men and women, I would have held my peace. For our affliction is not to be compared with the loss to the king. Anybody understood what that means? What she's saying is we are a valuable people. We are assets in the king's kingdom. So for anybody to plot and conspire to annihilate such people who are so valuable to the king is also a crime. You see, so see how she's presenting it? We are a valuable people. And if you don't think they were, let me tell you what, the Jewish people in the 1st century BC in the Roman Empire were considered a very valuable asset. They would actually import groups of Jews in cities that had just been refounded or were needed to be beefed up in terms of the economy or the trade in that particular place. So I think it's important to see that everywhere they go, having Jewish people has been an asset. A Jewish community has been an asset. And in this case probably is also one of the things that she's referring to. Then King Ahasuerus said to Queen Esther, who is he and where is he and who would presume to do this? And Esther said, again, I just can't think of a screenplay. It would be great. Just write a screenplay for this particular scene. A foe and an enemy. And you can see Haman's all going, okay, whatever. When are we done? Let's bring more wine. He has no idea as to who she's talking to until finally a foe and an enemy, this wicked Haman. It must have been quite a shock for Haman. Then Haman was in terror before the king and the queen. And the king rose from the feast in wrath and went into the palace garden. So the king has to go out basically to cool down in the palace garden. But Haman stayed to beg his life from Queen Esther, for he saw that evil was determined against him by the king. I guess he could read his master well. You know, that same master who is easily angry and is kind of fickle can turn against him too. You can get him to slaughter all the Jews in the empire, but then what is he going to do when he's mad at you? So it kind of cuts both ways, doesn't it? Verse 8, and the king returned from the palace garden to the place where they were drinking wine, as Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was. So, this poor guy. What a coincidence. What a coincidence. Isn't this the book of coincidences, right? The book of God's actions that are thinly veiled under happenstance. He just happened to be falling on the sofa, on the same sofa that the queen was sitting on, and which was a big no-no anyway. And maybe he missed. Maybe he meant to sit down and ended up on top of her. Who knows? The poor guy. Really, I don't want to feel sorry for him, but you can see that, his number is up. Yeah, and the king said, will he even assault the queen in my presence, in my own house? As the words left the mouth of the king, they covered Haman's face. That's court speak for he's toast. he's done.